Married for 2 years but living separately, until the millionaire whispered, "Tonight you're mine." Before we explore all the details of this incredible story, tell us where you're following us from and the time. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and let's embark on this journey together. The champagne glass trembled in her hand, but Anna L. Brooks Miller refused to let it fall. She stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of their penthouse, watching the city lights blur into golden streaks through the rain-soaked glass. 27 floors below, Manhattan pulsed with life, but up here, in this marble and crystal palace, silence reigned like a cruel king. "Mrs. Miller, dinner is ready," came Elena's gentle voice from behind her. Anna L. didn't turn around. The housekeeper's footsteps retreated across the Italian marble, leaving her alone with the weight of another evening stretching endlessly ahead. Her reflection stared back from the window, a woman with rich, dark skin that seemed to glow even in the dim lighting. Her natural hair swept into an elegant low bun that accentuated the graceful curve of her neck. She wore a deep emerald silk dress that hugged her petite but curvy frame, chosen not for comfort, but as armor. At 27, she possessed the kind of beauty that made people pause. Full lips, expressive dark eyes, framed by naturally long lashes, and a presence that commanded attention without demanding it. But tonight, she felt invisible. The sound of a key turning in the front door made her spine straighten. Michael was home. His footsteps echoed through the foyer, measured, purposeful, the same rhythm she'd memorized over 3 years of marriage. She could picture him perfectly, tall and commanding at 6'2", his broad shoulders filling out his tailored navy suit, dark hair slightly tousled from the October wind, those piercing blue eyes that once held so much warmth, now distant as winter lakes. "Elena, I'll eat in my office," his deep voice carried across the space. Not their dining room, not with her, his office. Anna L. closed her eyes and took a steadying breath. When had they become strangers sharing an address? She remembered their wedding day 3 years ago, how Michael had looked at her like she was his entire universe, how his hands had trembled when he slipped the ring onto her finger, how he'd whispered against her ear during their first dance that he'd never believed in fairy tales until he met her. Michael Miller, the self-made millionaire who'd built his investment empire from nothing, had been fearless in business, but vulnerable in love. She'd fallen for the man beneath the expensive suits, the one who made her coffee every morning and traced patterns on her skin while she slept. Now they lived like polite roommates in a luxury prison. The elevator dinged softly, Michael heading up to the 32nd floor where his private office occupied half the space. Even at home, he chose distance. Anna L. finally turned from the window, her reflection dissolving into memory. The dining room table was set for 2, as Elena arranged it every night with stubborn optimism. Crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier, and white roses, Michael's weekly order that continued like clockwork, even as their conversations dwindled, perfumed the air with false romance. She approached the table and ran her fingers along the back of his empty chair. When had she stopped trying to fill it? Her phone buzzed against the marble countertop. A text from her best friend Camille. "Girl, you're all over the society pages again. Power couple goals. They're calling you and Michael. If only they knew. If only they knew that the woman in those glossy photos, smiling beside her handsome husband at charity galas and business events, went home to sleep in a bed that felt as wide and cold as an ocean." Anna L. picked up her champagne glass and walked toward the staircase. The Italian marble felt cool beneath her bare feet as she climbed toward the bedroom level. Her bedroom level now. Michael had moved his things to the guest suite months ago, claiming he didn't want to disturb her with his early morning calls and late-night work sessions. Such a gentleman, such a liar. She paused outside the guest suite door, her hand hovering near the polished brass handle. Light seeped from beneath, along with the soft clicking of computer keys. He was there, so close she could smell his cologne lingering in the hallway, that intoxicating blend of bergamot and cedar that used to make her pulse race. Now it just made her heart ache. She pressed her palm flat against the door, imagining she could feel his warmth through the wood. What would happen if she knocked? If she walked in wearing nothing but honesty and asked him why he'd stopped seeing her as a woman and started treating her like a beautiful, expensive decoration? The typing stopped. Her breath caught. Had he heard her? Was he standing on the other side of this door, close enough to touch but separated by so much more than wood and brass? After a moment that felt like eternity, the typing resumed. Anna L. lowered her hand and continued to her bedroom, the master suite that no longer mastered anything but loneliness. She set her champagne glass on the nightstand, and began to undress, each movement deliberate and slow, as if shedding more than just silk and lace. In the mirror of her vanity, she studied herself with critical eyes. Her body was the same one Michael had worshipped with his hands and mouth, the same skin he'd mapped with kisses, the same curves he'd claimed were crafted just for him. Nothing had changed physically. Everything had changed emotionally. She slipped into a silk nightgown, not the practical cotton she'd grown accustomed to, but the champagne-colored piece he'd bought her on their honeymoon in Tuscany. The fabric whispered against her skin like a ghost of better times. Tomorrow, she decided, she would stop pretending everything was fine. Tomorrow she would demand answers to the questions that kept her awake at night. Tomorrow she would fight for her marriage or walk away from it. But tonight she would lie in their bed and remember what it felt like to be loved by Michael Miller, back when love was enough to bridge any distance. She turned off the lights and slipped between the Egyptian cotton sheets, still warm from the day's sun streaming through the windows. Outside, the city continued its restless dance, but inside the penthouse, silence settled like dust over dreams deferred. Just before sleep claimed her, she heard it, the soft sound of footsteps pausing outside her door. Her heart stopped. Was he there? Would he finally come to her? The footsteps continued past, fading toward the stairs. Anaël closed her eyes and wondered how much longer a heart could survive on hope alone. And in the darkness, she whispered the question that would change everything. How long can love live on memories before it starves to death? The coffee maker's gentle hum was the only sound breaking the silence at 6:47 a.m. Anaël stood in the kitchen, barefoot on the heated marble floor, watching the dark liquid drip into the glass carafe. She'd given up sleeping somewhere around 4, her mind replaying those footsteps outside her door until dawn painted the windows gold. She wore a cream silk robe that fell just below her knees, her natural hair loose around her shoulders in soft coils that caught the morning light. Without makeup, her beauty was understated but striking, the kind that needed no enhancement, only appreciation. The elevator chimed softly. Michael. She didn't turn around, but her body tensed with awareness as his presence filled the space behind her. She could feel his eyes on her, could smell that intoxicating cologne mixed with the crisp scent of his shower gel. "You're up early." His deep voice carried a note of surprise. "So are you," she thought, but said nothing. Instead, she reached for 2 mugs from the cabinet, the same ritual they'd shared every morning for 3 years, now performed in careful choreography to avoid accidental touches. Michael approached the kitchen island, his Italian leather shoes soft against the floor. She glimpsed him in her peripheral vision, charcoal grey suit perfectly tailored to his broad frame, white dress shirt open at the collar, dark hair still slightly damp from his shower. Even in her anger, her body responded to his proximity with traitorous heat. "Anaël." "Black. No sugar," she said quietly, pouring his coffee exactly as he liked it. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she slid the mug across the marble island toward him. Their fingers brushed as he reached for it. The contact lasted less than a second, but electricity shot through her arm straight to her heart. Michael's blue eyes widened almost imperceptibly. He felt it too. She pulled her hand back as if burned and busied herself adding cream to her own coffee, the silence stretching between them like a chasm. "The Pemberton merger closes today," he said finally, his tone carefully neutral. "I'll be in meetings until late." "Of course you will." The words slipped out before she could stop them. Michael's jaw tightened. What's that supposed to mean? Now she did turn to face him, her dark eyes flashing with 3 months of accumulated frustration. "Nothing, Michael. It means exactly what you want it to mean, nothing." He set his mug down harder than necessary. "I'm working to build our future, Anaël. The empire I'm creating is for both of us." "Our future?" She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "We don't even share a present. We're strangers who happen to have the same last name. That's not fair." She stepped closer, close enough to see the flecks of silver in his blue eyes, close enough to remember how those eyes used to look at her with desire instead of this careful politeness. "What's not fair is being married to a ghost." Michael's hands clenched at his sides. She could see the war playing out across his features, the man who used to pull her into his arms every morning fighting against whatever wall he'd built around his heart. "I'm trying to protect you," he said quietly. "From what? Happiness? Love? Or just from you?" The question hung in the air between them like a blade. Michael's face went carefully blank, the same expression he wore in boardrooms when negotiations got dangerous. "I have to go," he said, reaching for his coffee mug, Harrison is picking me up in 10 minutes. Run, she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. That's what you do best now. Michael froze with the mug halfway to his lips. For a moment she thought he might finally break, might finally give her the honesty she was desperate for. Instead, he drained the coffee in 3 quick swallows and set the empty mug in the sink. I'll be home late, he said without looking at her. You're always home late, she replied to his retreating form. She watched him disappear into the elevator, her reflection multiplying endlessly in the polished steel doors until they closed with a soft whisper. Alone again. Anaël slumped against the kitchen island, her robe falling open slightly to reveal the silk nightgown beneath. She felt like she was drowning in her own home, suffocating on unspoken words and unlived touches. Her phone buzzed against the marble, a text from her sister Jordan. Coffee later? You sounded off yesterday. She stared at the message, considering. Jordan was the only person who knew how bad things had gotten, the only one who wouldn't judge her for staying in a marriage that felt more like an elegant prison. Before she could respond, Eleanor appeared in the kitchen doorway, her kind face creased with concern. Mrs. Miller, I heard voices. Is everything all right? Perfect, Anaël said with false brightness. Just discussing Mr. Miller's schedule. Eleanor's knowing look said she wasn't fooled, but she nodded anyway. Shall I prepare breakfast for one then? The casual assumption hit like a physical blow. Even the housekeeper knew their marriage was a performance now. Yes, Anaël whispered, just for one. As Elena busied herself with eggs and fresh fruit, Anaël escaped to the terrace. The October air was crisp against her skin, carrying the scent of autumn and possibility. 27 floors below, the city was waking up, people rushing to jobs, to lovers, to lives that mattered. She gripped the railing and closed her eyes, remembering their first morning as newlyweds. Michael had woken her with kisses, his hands mapping her body with reverent slowness, while he whispered how beautiful she was, how lucky he was, how he'd spend every morning for the rest of his life showing her exactly how much he loved her. Liar, she breathed to the wind. Her phone rang. Jordan. Hey sis, her sister's warm voice filled the silence. You sound like you need more than coffee. You need wine and a good cry. It's not even 8 a.m., Jordan. Honey, when your marriage is falling apart, time becomes relative. What did he do now? Anaël found herself smiling for the first time in days. Jordan was 3 years younger, but infinitely wiser when it came to reading people's hearts. He didn't do anything, that's the problem. Ah, Jordan said knowingly. The Michael Miller freeze-out continues. What's it been now, 3 months? 4, Anaël corrected quietly. 4 months of living with a man who treats you like an expensive roommate. Baby girl, even you have limits. Do I? Anaël wondered. Because every morning she made his coffee, every evening she hoped he'd come to her door, every night she fell asleep wearing silk instead of cotton, just in case he remembered he had a wife. I'm fighting for my marriage, Jordan. No, her sister said gently. You're fighting for a ghost. The question is, how long before you start fighting for yourself? The line went quiet except for the sound of traffic far below and Anaël's unsteady breathing. I don't know how to stop loving him, she admitted. I'm not asking you to stop loving him. I'm asking you to start loving yourself enough to demand more than crumbs. After they hung up, Anaël remained on the terrace, Jordan's words echoing in her mind. Demand more than crumbs. She thought about the way Michael's fingers had brushed hers this morning, how his entire body had gone rigid at the contact. There was still fire there, banked and hidden, but not extinguished. The question was, did she have the courage to fan those flames, or would she let them die out completely? That evening, she decided, she would find out exactly what kind of woman she'd become in 4 months of marriage to a stranger. And Michael Miller would finally have to choose between his walls and his wife. She hadn't planned to be beautiful that evening, but heartbreak had a way of sharpening a woman's edges until she cut like a diamond. Anaël stood before her walk-in closet at 6 p.m., surveying rows of designer dresses like a general choosing weapons for war. Michael would be home soon. He'd texted that the Pemberton merger had closed successfully, and they were celebrating with the team. Translation, he'd be home late, slightly drunk, and even more distant than usual. Perfect. She selected a midnight blue silk dress that hugged every curve before flowing like liquid mercury to mid-thigh. The neckline was conservative enough for propriety, but cut to make a man remember why he'd fallen in love in the first place. She paired it with nude heels that made her legs look endless, and diamond earrings that caught the light like stars. Her reflection in the full-length mirror showed a woman transformed. Gone was the wife who waited patiently in silk robes. This was Anna L. Brooks, the woman who'd captured a millionaire's heart 3 years ago before she'd forgotten her own power. Her natural hair was swept into an elegant updo that showcased her graceful neck, and her makeup was flawless but understated. Dewy skin that seemed to glow from within, eyes defined with subtle smoky shadows that made her dark irises look mysterious, lips painted in a shade of berry that begged to be kissed. She sprayed his favorite perfume, Tom Ford Black Orchid, on her pulse points and smiled at herself in the mirror. If Michael Miller wanted to play the game of indifference, she'd show him exactly what he was pretending not to want. At 7:30, she descended the stairs like a queen approaching her throne. Elena looked up from arranging fresh flowers in the foyer and gasped softly. "Mrs. Miller, you look stunning." "Thank you, Eleanor. I'm expecting Mr. Miller home soon. When he arrives, please tell him I'm in the living room." "Of course. Should I prepare dinner?" Anna L's smile was sharp as winter wind. "No need. I suspect Mr. Miller won't be hungry for food tonight." Elena's knowing look suggested she understood the subtext perfectly. The living room was a masterpiece of understated luxury. Cream leather sofas arranged around a marble fireplace, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of Central Park, and art worth more than most people's homes adorning the walls. Anna Ella had dimmed the lights and lit candles, transforming the space into something intimate and charged with possibility. She positioned herself on the sofa facing the entrance, legs crossed elegantly, a glass of wine in her hand. Then she waited. At 8:45 she heard his key in the door. Michael's footsteps echoed across the marble foyer, slower than usual, slightly unsteady. The merger celebration had indeed involved alcohol. Good. Liquor had a way of dissolving the walls men built around their hearts. "Elena," his voice carried through the penthouse, "is Anna L. "In the living room, Mr. Miller," Elena's voice replied from somewhere near the kitchen. A pause. Then footsteps approaching. Anna L. took a slow sip of wine and didn't look up when his shadow filled the doorway. She could feel his presence like electricity in the air, could hear his sharp intake of breath when he saw her. "Jesus," he whispered, so quietly she almost missed it. Now she looked up, her dark eyes meeting his blue ones across the candlelit space. Michael stood frozen in the doorway, still wearing his charcoal suit, but with his tie loosened and the top button of his shirt undone. His hair was slightly mussed, and there was a flush across his sharp cheekbones that spoke of expensive whiskey and successful deals, but it was the look in his eyes that made her pulse race, hunger, raw and undisguised, before he quickly shuttered it behind that familiar mask of control. "You're home," she said softly, her voice carrying just enough warmth to be dangerous. "I texted you about the celebration." His voice was rougher than usual, affected by more than just alcohol. "Congratulations on the merger." She stood gracefully, the silk dress whispering against her skin. "I thought we should celebrate too." Michael's eyes tracked her movement like a predator watching prey. She could see the war raging in his expression, desire battling against whatever demons had been driving him away from her bed for 4 months. "Anna L.," he started, his voice a warning. "Yes?" She moved closer, close enough to smell the whiskey on his breath, close enough to see the way his pupils dilated as her perfume reached him. "What are you doing?" She smiled, slow and knowing. "I'm being your wife." The words hit him like a physical blow. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, and she could see his chest rising and falling with carefully controlled breaths. "You've been drinking," she observed, reaching up to straighten his already perfect collar. Her fingers brushed against the warm skin of his throat, and he shuddered. "Not enough," he muttered. "Enough for what?" "Enough to resist you when you look like—" He gestured helplessly at her appearance. "Like what, Michael? Like your wife? Like a woman who remembers when her husband couldn't keep his hands off her?" He caught her wrist as her fingers traced along his jaw, his grip firm but not painful. "Don't." "Don't what? Touch you? Want you? Love you?" Each word was delivered like a kiss, soft and devastating. "Don't make this harder than it has to be." She laughed, but there was pain beneath the sound. "Harder? Michael, you've turned our marriage into a tomb. How much harder could it possibly get?" He released her wrist and stepped back, running a hand through his dark hair. "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me." The words exploded from her, with 3 months of suppressed frustration. "Explain why my husband moved out of our bedroom. Explain why you look at me like I'm a stranger. Explain why the man who used to make love to me like I was his salvation now Can't even stand to be in the same room. Because I can't. The admission burst from him like a dam breaking. Because every time I look at you, every time I touch you, all I can think about is... He stopped abruptly, his face going pale. About what? She pressed, moving closer again. About what, Michael? But the moment of vulnerability was gone, shuttered behind walls that seemed higher than ever. I can't do this tonight, he said quietly, straightening his tie with hands that trembled slightly. I'm going to my office. Run, she called after him as he headed for the elevator. That's your solution to everything, isn't it? Run from your wife, run from your feelings, run from whatever truth you're so afraid to face. The elevator doors slid closed between them, but not before she saw the devastation in his eyes. Anaël stood alone in the candle-lit living room, her reflection multiplied in the dark windows like a woman trapped in a house of mirrors. She'd pushed, and he'd almost broken. For a moment she'd seen past his walls to the man who was drowning in whatever pain he couldn't name. All I can think about is... About what? What was so terrible that it had turned her passionate husband into a polite stranger? She blew out the candles one by one, watching the smoke curl toward the ceiling like prayers that would never be answered. Tomorrow, she decided, she would stop playing games. Tomorrow she would find out exactly what kind of ghost was haunting her marriage, and Michael Miller would finally have to choose between his secrets and his soul. The answer came in a photograph hidden behind financial documents. Anaël hadn't meant to invade Michael's privacy. At least, that's what she told herself as she sat in his home office at 11 a.m., surrounded by the controlled chaos of a man who built empires for a living. She'd come looking for their tax documents, something innocent and wifely, but the locked drawer had called to her like a secret begging to be told. It had taken her 20 minutes to find the spare key taped under his desk drawer, a hiding place so obvious it felt almost intentional, as if part of him wanted to be discovered. Inside the drawer were the usual suspects: contracts, legal documents, business correspondence. But wedged behind a folder marked Pemberton Acquisition was a single photograph, creased from handling, edges worn soft with time. Two men stood side by side on what looked like a yacht, arms around each other's shoulders, identical grins splitting their faces. Michael, maybe 5 years younger, his hair longer and his smile more carefree than she'd seen since their honeymoon, and beside him, another man who could have been his twin. Same height, same build, same piercing blue eyes. But where Michael's features were sharp and commanding, this man's were softer, kinder. Where Michael held himself with the rigid control of a man who'd built walls around his heart, this man radiated warmth, even through a photograph. On the back, in Michael's careful handwriting, Danny and Michael, Martha's Vineyard, 2019. Brothers by choice, friends for life, Danny. Michael had never mentioned a Danny. Anaël's hands trembled as she studied the photo. The resemblance was uncanny. They could have been blood brothers. More than that, there was an ease between them that spoke of deep friendship, the kind of bond that transcended family ties. Where was Danny now? And why had Michael never mentioned someone who was clearly important enough to keep a worn photograph of in his most private space? Mrs. Miller. Anaël jumped, nearly dropping the photograph. Eleanor stood in the doorway, her kind face creased with concern. I'm sorry to startle you. Mr. Miller called. He's coming home for lunch. He asked me to tell you. Home for lunch? Anaël's voice came out strangled. Michael never came home for lunch, ever. Yes, Ma'am. He seemed agitated. Anaël quickly slipped the photograph back behind the folder and closed the drawer, her heart hammering against her ribs. Thank you, Elena. I was just looking for our tax documents. Elena's knowing look suggested she'd seen the photograph before and knew exactly why Anaël had gone searching for answers. 15 minutes later, the elevator chimed. Michael's footsteps across the marble were sharp and purposeful, but there was something different about them, an urgency that made Anaël's pulse quicken. She waited in the living room, the photograph burning in her memory like a brand. When Michael appeared in the doorway, she saw immediately that something had shifted. His usual mask of control had cracks in it, and his blue eyes held a wildness she hadn't seen since their confrontation the night before. We need to talk, he said, without preamble. Do we? She kept her voice level, but her fingers gripped the arm of the sofa. About what? Your mysterious late nights? Your sudden need to live like a monk? Or maybe about Danny? The name hung between them like a confession. Anaël's breath caught, but she forced herself to remain still. So who's Danny? She asked carefully. Michael's laugh was hollow, broken. You found the photograph. It wasn't a question. He knew. Maybe he'd wanted her to find it, needed her to discover what he couldn't bring himself to say. You never mentioned him, she said softly, because talking about Danny means talking about why he's not here anymore. Michael moved to the window, his back rigid with tension. And I can't do that. What happened to him? The silence stretched so long that Anaël thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Car accident, 6 months ago. He was coming to see me. Had something important to tell me, he said. It was raining and the roads were slick and a drunk driver ran a red light. Anaël's heart clenched. 6 months ago, right around the time Michael had started pulling away from her. Michael, she started, but he held up a hand. He died instantly. That's what they told me, no pain, no suffering. Like that was supposed to make it better. He pressed his forehead against the cool glass. He was my brother in every way that mattered. We built our first business together in college, failed spectacularly and laughed about it for years. He was supposed to be my best man when I married you, but he was in London closing a deal. He was supposed to... His voice broke. Anaël stood slowly, her heart breaking for the man she'd married, the man who'd been carrying this grief alone for 6 months, while she'd interpreted his withdrawal as rejection. He was supposed to meet you properly, Michael continued, his reflection ghost-like in the window. Not just the quick introduction at our engagement party. He was supposed to be Uncle Danny to our children. He was supposed to grow old with us, be the brother you never had, the friend who kept me grounded when success went to my head. Why didn't you tell me? She asked, moving closer but not touching. Not yet. Because talking about Danny means talking about how I failed him, how I was supposed to be there that night, but I cancelled because of a board meeting. How the last thing I said to him was that business came first, family second. His hands pressed flat against the glass. How the most important person in my life died thinking I didn't have time for him. Understanding crashed over Anaël like a wave. So you pulled away from me. If I could lose Danny, someone who'd been in my life for 15 years, what's to stop me from losing you? What's to stop the universe from taking away everyone I love? He turned to face her, and she saw tears tracking down his cheeks. I thought if I kept my distance, if I didn't let myself need you too much, maybe I could protect you. Maybe I could protect myself. From what? From love? From life? From the pain of losing you. The admission came out broken, raw. Because I can't survive losing you too, Anaël. I can't. She closed the distance between them in 3 quick steps, her hands framing his face, thumbs brushing away his tears. You haven't lost me, she whispered fiercely. I'm right here. I've been right here for 6 months trying to reach you through walls you built to keep me out. I was trying to protect you. You were trying to protect yourself, and in the process, you made me feel like I didn't matter, like our marriage was something you could take or leave. His hands covered hers, pressing them more firmly against his face. You matter more than breathing. That's the problem. That's not a problem, Michael. That's love. That's what marriage is supposed to be. 2 people who matter more to each other than anything else in the world. What if I lose you too? What if you don't? What if instead of spending our lives afraid of an ending that might never come, we spend them grateful for every beginning we get to share? For a moment they stood frozen in the afternoon light, 2 people remembering what it felt like to be seen, to be known, to be necessary to someone else's survival. I miss him, Michael whispered. I know. I miss us. We're still here, she said softly. Bruised maybe, a little broken, but still here. He pulled her against him then, his arms wrapping around her like a man drowning who'd finally found something solid to hold on to. She felt his body shaking with months of suppressed grief, heard him whisper her name like a prayer against her hair. I'm sorry, he breathed. God, Anaël, I'm so sorry. She held him as he broke apart in her arms. This strong, powerful man who'd forgotten that strength sometimes meant letting someone else carry part of the weight. And for the first time in 6 months, they stood together in the light. No walls between them. But healing, Anaël knew, was just the beginning. The next morning came with unexpected tenderness. Anaël woke to the scent of fresh coffee and something else. Bacon, maybe pancakes. Real cooking, not Elena's efficient breakfast preparations. She slipped on her silk robe and padded barefoot toward the kitchen, her heart cautiously hopeful. Michael stood at the stove, still wearing his pajama pants and a white t-shirt that clung to his broad shoulders. His dark hair was tousled from sleep, and there was a softness to his posture she hadn't seen in months. He was making pancakes, badly if the slightly burned edges were any indication, but making them nonetheless. "You're going to burn the building down," she said softly from the doorway. He turned, and the smile that spread across his face was like sunrise after the longest night. "Good morning to you too. And for your information, I've successfully made breakfast without calling the fire department. Yet." "Yet," he agreed, flipping a pancake with more enthusiasm than skill. "Coffee's fresh. Made it the way you like it." She moved to the island where 2 mugs sat waiting, hers with cream perfectly prepared. Such a small gesture, but it felt monumental after months of careful distance. "You don't have to cook for me," she said, accepting the mug gratefully. "I want to." He met her eyes over the stove. "I want to do a lot of things I stopped doing." The words hung between them, loaded with possibility and promise. Anaël felt something tight in her chest begin to loosen. "Elena's going to have a heart attack when she sees the mess you're making of her kitchen." Michael glanced around at the flour-dusted counters and syrup-sticky surfaces. "I may have gotten a little carried away. It's been a while since I cooked anything more complicated than instant coffee." "When was the last time?" "The weekend before Danny died." The name came easier now, though she could see the shadow that crossed his features. "He came to visit, insisted I make my famous disaster pancakes, said they tasted terrible but felt like home." Anaël set down her mug and moved to stand beside him at the stove, close enough to feel his warmth, to catch the familiar scent of his skin beneath the coffee and cooking smells. "Tell me about him," she said quietly. Michael was quiet for a long moment, concentrating on rescuing a pancake from certain doom. "He was the better version of me, kinder, funnier, more patient. I was always the driven one, the one who saw opportunities and grabbed them. Danny was the one who remembered to enjoy the ride." "How did you meet?" "College roommates. Random assignment that turned into the best friendship of my life. He was studying literature while I was buried in business courses. He used to read me poetry when I got too stressed about exams." Michael's smile was soft with memory. "Said it would civilize me. Did it work?" "You'd have to ask him." The words slipped out before he could stop them, and his face crumpled slightly. "I mean, you would have had to ask him." Anaël reached over and turned off the burner, then gently took the spatula from his hands. "Sit," she said firmly. "Let me finish these before you burn them." "I'm fine. Michael, sit." He obeyed, settling onto one of the bar stools while she took over pancake duty. The kitchen fell into comfortable silence, broken only by the sizzle of batter and the soft clink of dishes. "I used to talk to you about everything," he said suddenly. "In the beginning. Remember? I'd come home and tell you about my day, about deals and meetings and stupid things Harrison said." "I remember." She flipped a pancake with considerably more skill than he'd shown. "You'd pace the living room, gesticulating wildly, getting more animated as you talked. You'd curl up on the sofa and watch me like I was the most interesting man in the world. You were." She glanced at him over her shoulder. "You still are." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, that she still saw him that way after months of distance. "When Danny died, I stopped being able to talk about anything. Every conversation felt trivial compared to the fact that he was gone. How could I complain about a difficult client when my best friend was dead? How could I get excited about a successful merger when the person I most wanted to share it with would never answer his phone again?" Anaël plated the pancakes and moved to stand in front of him, the island between them. "So you stopped talking to me altogether." "I stopped talking to everyone, even myself, if that makes sense." "It does." She pushed the plate toward him. "Grief has a way of stealing your voice along with everything else." Michael picked up his fork but didn't eat. "I know I hurt you. I know these past 6 months have been... God, Anaël, I know I made you feel unwanted, unloved. You did. There was no point in softening the truth. But I understand now. It doesn't erase the hurt, but I understand. How can you forgive me so easily? Who says it's easy?" She came around the island to sit beside him. "Forgiveness isn't easy, Michael. It's necessary, for both of us." He finally took a bite of pancake, made a face, and laughed. "These really are terrible. Absolutely awful," she agreed, taking a bite herself. "But they taste like trying, and that's something." They ate in companionable silence, 2 people learning how to be married again. When Michael's phone buzzed with what was undoubtedly work, he looked at it but didn't pick it up. "Aren't you going to answer that?" "No." He turned the phone face down. "I'm having breakfast with my wife. Everything else can wait." Such a small thing, choosing her over a phone call, but Anaël felt tears prick her eyes. For 6 months, she'd felt invisible in her own marriage. Now suddenly, she felt seen again. "I want to show you something," Michael said, reaching for his phone. "If you're ready." He scrolled through his photos until he found what he was looking for, then handed her the device. On the screen was a video. Danny and Michael at what looked like a barbecue, both of them laughing as Danny attempted to flip a burger and sent it flying into the bushes. "He was even worse at cooking than I am," Michael said softly, but he never stopped trying. In the video, Danny looked directly at the camera and grinned. "Michael Miller," he said, pointing his spatula accusingly, "when you get married, you better find a woman who can cook, because between the two of us, we're going to starve." Anna L's throat tightened. This was the man who should have been at their wedding, who should have been Uncle Danny to their future children. This was the loss that had nearly broken her husband. "He would have loved you," Michael said quietly. "He always said I was too serious, that I needed someone who could make me laugh at myself, someone who saw through my bullshit. I would have loved him too." She handed the phone back. "Thank you for showing me. There are more stories, years of them, if you want to hear them." "I do. All of them." Michael nodded, then reached over and took her hand, the first deliberate touch they'd shared in months that wasn't born of crisis or confrontation. "I know we can't just go back to how things were," he said. "I know I have to earn your trust again, prove that I want to be present in this marriage." "You're right. We can't go back." She squeezed his fingers. "But maybe we can go forward, build something new, something that includes the grief instead of hiding from it." "I'd like that." He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a soft kiss to her knuckles. "I've missed you, Anael, not just as my wife, but as my friend, as the person who knew me better than anyone." "I'm still here," she said simply. "I've always been here." They sat together as the morning light grew stronger, two people who'd lost each other for a while, but were finding their way back. It wasn't a fairy tale reunion. There would be more conversations, more tears, more careful steps toward trust. But it was a beginning, and sometimes, Anael thought, beginnings were more beautiful than endings ever could be. 3 days later, Anael found herself nervous about her own husband coming home. She stood in their bedroom, not just hers anymore, adjusting the hem of her casual sundress for the 3rd time. Michael had called an hour ago to say he was leaving the office early, something that would have been unthinkable just a week before. They'd been taking tentative steps toward each other since the morning of the disastrous pancakes, but tonight felt different. Tonight, he was coming to her. The past few days had been a careful dance of rediscovery. Coffee together in the mornings before work, Michael asking about her day, actually listening to her answers. Small touches, his hand on her back as he passed behind her chair, her fingers grazing his as she handed him documents. Nothing rushed, nothing forced, but undeniably moving towards something more intimate than shared grief. A knock on the bedroom door made her heart skip. "Come in." Michael appeared in the doorway, and she felt her breath catch. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, revealing strong forearms that she'd once loved to trace with her fingertips. His blue eyes held a warmth she'd almost forgotten existed. "Hi," he said simply. "Hi yourself." She smoothed her dress again, suddenly feeling like a teenager on a first date. "How was your day?" "Better now." He stepped into the room, their room, and looked around as if seeing it for the first time in months. "I forgot how beautiful this space is. You helped design it." She perched on the edge of the bed, watching him take in the soft cream walls, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, the sitting area where they used to talk for hours before sleep claimed them. "We designed it," he corrected, moving to the window. "You chose the colors, the textures, said you wanted it to feel like a sanctuary. It hasn't felt like one in a while." He turned to face her, leaning against the window frame. "I want to change that if you'll let me." The words hung between them, loaded with possibility and fear in equal measure. Anael studied his face, searching for signs of the walls he'd built, but found only honest vulnerability. "What does that mean exactly?" she asked quietly. Michael ran a hand through his hair, a gesture she recognized as his tell for nervousness. "It means I want to come home, not just to the penthouse, but to you, to us. And what about your office upstairs? Your separate life? I'll keep the office for work, but I want to sleep here with you, wake up next to you, be your husband again, not just your roommate who happens to share an address." Anael's heart hammered against her ribs. She'd dreamed of this moment for months, but now that it was here, she felt terrified. What if they'd grown too far apart? What if the careful distance had become a habit they couldn't break? "I'm scared," she admitted. "So am I." He moved closer, stopping just within arm's reach. "I'm scared that I've forgotten how to be close to someone. I'm scared that I'll pull away again when things get difficult. I'm scared that you'll realize you're better off without me. And I'm scared that this is temporary, that you'll wake up tomorrow and decide it's easier to keep your walls up than to do the work of loving me." The words came out in a rush, months of fear finally given voice. Michael's face crumpled slightly. "God, Anaël, what have I done to you? What have I done to us?" "You grieved," she said softly. "Badly, but you grieved. And now we both have to decide if we want to do the work of healing." He knelt in front of her then, his hands resting on either side of her legs on the bed, close but not touching. "I want to do the work. I want to fight for us. But I need you to know that I might stumble. I might have bad days where the grief hits me like a truck and I forget how to be present. I might have bad days too, days when I remember how invisible you made me feel and I get angry all over again. Then we'll stumble together." He reached up, his fingers barely grazing her cheek. "And when we fall, we'll help each other get back up." The touch was feather light, but it sent electricity racing through her entire body. She'd forgotten how her skin came alive under his hands, how her breath quickened when he looked at her like she was the only woman in the world. "Michael," she whispered, "can I hold you?" The question was so vulnerable, so uncertain, that tears pricked her eyes. "I just want to hold you." Instead of answering, she slid forward on the bed until her legs were on either side of his kneeling form, then wrapped her arms around his neck. His response was immediate. Strong arms circling her waist, pulling her against him until they were breathing the same air. They stayed like that for a long time, learning each other's bodies again. She felt the tension slowly leave his shoulders, felt him bury his face in her neck, and breathe deeply, as if memorizing her scent. "I missed this," he murmured against her skin. "I missed you so much it felt like drowning." "I'm here now," she whispered into his hair. "We're both here." When he finally pulled back to look at her, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I love you, Anaël. I never stopped loving you, even when I was too broken to show it. I love you too." She cupped his face in her hands. "But love isn't enough anymore, Michael. We need trust. We need communication. We need to choose each other every day, not just when it's easy." "I know." He turned his head to kiss her palm. "And I want to. God, I want to so badly." "Then show me." The words were a challenge and an invitation wrapped in silk, not with grand gestures or expensive gifts. "Show me by staying, by talking to me when you're hurting instead of shutting me out, by choosing us even when the grief makes it hard to choose anything. Starting now, starting now." He stood slowly, his hands never leaving her waist, and she thought for a moment he might kiss her. Instead, he rested his forehead against hers, breathing her in. "Will you have dinner with me tonight? Not in the dining room, not with Elena serving us like strangers, just us, takeout, maybe on the floor like we used to do in our first apartment." The memory hit her like a wave. Their tiny studio with barely enough room for a bed and a table, eating Chinese food cross-legged on the hardwood floor because they couldn't afford proper furniture yet. They'd been broke, but blissfully happy, talking until dawn about dreams and plans and the future they'd build together. "Thai food," she said, smiling through her tears. "From that place on 82nd that makes the pad Thai too spicy, but we order it anyway." "Thai food," he agreed, his own smile breaking through like sunrise. "And we'll talk about everything, about Danny, about the business, about what we want our marriage to look like going forward." "And after dinner?" His eyes darkened slightly, but he kept his voice careful. "After dinner, we take it one moment at a time. No expectations, no pressure. Just us, figuring out how to be married again." It wasn't a promise of passion or a return to the physical intimacy they'd shared before grief built walls between them, but it was honest, and right now, honesty felt more intimate than any touch. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, okay." She leaned forward and pressed a soft kiss to his lips, brief, gentle, but full of possibility. "Let's figure out how to be married again." When they broke apart, both breathing slightly unsteadily, Michael smiled that crooked smile she'd fallen in love with 3 years ago. "I'll call for food," he said. "I'll change into something more comfortable. You're perfect as you are." Flatterer, truth-teller. As he headed for the door, she called after him. "Michael?" "Yeah, we're going to be okay, aren't we?" He paused in the doorway, his back to her, and for a moment she worried he'd retreat behind politeness again. But when he turned, his face was open, hopeful. "Ask me tomorrow," he said, "and the day after that, and the day after that, and maybe one day we'll both know the answer without having to ask." After he left to order food, Anaël sat on the bed they might soon share again, and let herself hope that tomorrow would be the first day of many answers. The takeout containers lay forgotten on the coffee table, their contents barely touched. They'd started the evening with the best intentions. Thai food on the living room floor, honest conversation, careful steps toward each other. But somewhere between Michael's story about Danny's terrible karaoke habits and Anael's confession about the night she'd stood outside his office door, hoping he'd invite her in, the space between them had charged with something more dangerous than grief or healing. Now they sat facing each other on the Persian rug, the city lights streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and the air between them hummed with 6 months of suppressed desire. "Tell me about the worst day," Anael said softly, tucking her legs beneath her flowing sundress. They'd agreed to honesty, to sharing the hard truths that had driven them apart. Michael's blue eyes darkened. "You sure you want to hear this?" "I'm sure." He was quiet for a long moment, rolling his wine glass between his palms. He'd changed into jeans and a navy Henley that clung to his chest in ways that made it hard for her to concentrate on anything but the memory of her hands mapping those muscles. 2 weeks after the funeral," he said finally, "I came home and found you asleep on our bed, wearing that yellow sundress I bought you in Italy. You looked so beautiful, so peaceful, and all I could think was how fragile happiness is, how quickly it can be taken away." His voice roughened. "I stood in that doorway for 20 minutes wanting to crawl in beside you and hold you until the world made sense again. But all I could see was Danny's funeral, all those people crying, all that love turned to grief in an instant." Anael's throat tightened. "So you walked away?" "I walked away, and I kept walking away every day, until walking away felt normal." He met her eyes. "That was the night I moved to the guest room. The night I decided that loving you was too dangerous." "And what about tonight?" she asked quietly. "Does loving me still feel dangerous?" "Terrifying," he admitted, "but not loving you. Living like strangers who share an address. That's worse than dangerous. That's death by 1,000 cuts." The confession hung between them like a bridge neither was sure they were brave enough to cross. Hanachel felt her pulse quicken as Michael shifted closer, close enough that she could see the flecks of gold in his blue eyes, close enough to catch the scent of his cologne mixed with wine and something purely him. "I have a confession too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Tell me, that night you found me in the yellow dress? I wasn't asleep. I was pretending, hoping you'd come to me. When I heard you in the doorway, I thought maybe you remembered how to want me." Michael's breath caught. "Christ, Anael. I lay there for an hour after you left, wondering what was wrong with me. Why my own husband couldn't stand to be in the same room as me anymore. Nothing was wrong with you." His voice was rough with regret. "Everything was wrong with me." She reached out and touched his face, her fingers tracing the sharp line of his jaw. "We were both broken, but we're still here." "We're still here," he agreed, his hand covering hers against his cheek. The touch sparked something between them, not just desire, though that was certainly there, but recognition. They were remembering how to be close, how to breathe the same air without careful distance. "Michael," she whispered. "Yeah? I need you to know something." He waited, his eyes never leaving hers. "I'm not made of glass. I won't break if you let yourself need me. I won't disappear if you love me too much." Her thumb brushed across his lower lip. "The only way you'll lose me is if you keep pushing me away." Something shifted in his expression, the last wall crumbling, the final defense falling away. "I don't want to push you away anymore." "Then don't." The space between them disappeared. Michael's hand slid into her hair as he leaned forward, and when their lips met it was like coming home after a long exile. The kiss was soft at first, tentative, two people remembering how they fit together. But when she sighed against his mouth, when her free hand fisted in his shirt to pull him closer, gentleness gave way to months of suppressed hunger. "God, I've missed this," he murmured against her lips. "Missed you. Show me," she breathed. "Show me how much." His response was immediate and devastating. Strong arms lifted her easily, settling her across his lap so she straddled his thighs, her sundress pooling around them like water. His hands found the small of her back, pressing her closer until every line of her body was aligned with his. "Are you sure?" he asked, even as his lips traced a path along her throat that made her arch against him. "We don't have to rush this. We can take it slow." "Michael!" Her voice was firm, despite the way her breath hitched when he found that sensitive spot behind her ear. "I've been taking it slow for 6 months. I'm done being careful with you." The declaration seemed to snap something inside him. His mouth found hers again, hungrier this time, and she could taste the wine and want and words he was too overwhelmed to speak. Her fingers tangled in his dark hair, holding him to her as if he might disappear again. When they broke apart for air, both breathing hard, Michael rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said fiercely. "I love you so much it scares me. I love you so much I forgot how to function without you." "I love you too." She cupped his face in her hands. "But tonight isn't about love, Michael. Tonight is about us. About choosing each other. About saying yes to whatever this becomes." His eyes darkened with understanding and desire in equal measure. "Anaël, take me to bed," she whispered against his ear. "Take me to our bed and show me that my husband is finally ready to come home." The words seemed to unlock something primal in him. He stood in one fluid motion, lifting her with him, her legs automatically wrapping around his waist. She felt powerful and desired and necessary, feelings that had been buried under months of rejection and careful distance. "You're sure?" he asked one more time, even as he carried her toward the stairs. Instead of answering with words, she kissed him, deep and sure and full of 6 months of wanting. When they broke apart, his pupils were blown wide with desire. "I'm sure," she whispered. "Are you?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." As he carried her up the stairs toward their bedroom, toward the bed that had been cold and empty for too long, Anaël felt something shift in her chest. Not just desire, though that was burning through her like wildfire, but hope, real hope that they could find their way back to each other. The man carrying her wasn't the distant stranger who'd shared her address for months. This was Michael Miller, her husband, the man who'd once worshipped her body like a prayer and whispered love songs against her skin in the dark. And tonight, finally, he was coming home. "Whatever happens after tonight," she said as they reached the bedroom door, "we face it together. No more walls, no more distance, promise me." He set her down gently, his hands framing her face with reverent care. "I promise. No more walls, no more distance, no more running." She smiled, slow and sure and devastating. "Then welcome home, husband." And as he kissed her again, deeper this time, she knew that whatever came next would be theirs to face together. Sunlight painted golden patterns across the Egyptian cotton sheets as Anaël woke to warmth she hadn't felt in months. Michael's arm was heavy across her waist, his chest rising and falling against her back in the steady rhythm of deep sleep. For a moment, she lay perfectly still, afraid that moving might shatter this perfect bubble of intimacy they'd rebuilt in the dark hours of the night. Last night had been everything she'd hoped for and more, not just the passion that had rekindled between them like a fire that had never truly died, but the tenderness, the way he'd whispered her name like a prayer, the way he'd mapped every inch of her skin with reverent hands, the way they'd held each other afterward until dawn painted the windows pink with possibility. But now, in the unforgiving light of morning, doubt crept in like an unwelcome guest. Would he retreat again? Would the vulnerability of the night before send him running back to his walls? Michael stirred behind her, his arm tightening around her waist, and she felt him press a soft kiss to her shoulder. "Good morning, beautiful." His voice was rough with sleep and satisfaction. "Good morning." She turned in his arms, studying his face for signs of regret. Instead, she found blue eyes warm with contentment, and something that looked suspiciously like wonder. "How are you feeling?" he asked, his thumb tracing the curve of her cheek. "Like I got my husband back," she admitted softly. His smile was pure sunshine. "Good, because I have no intention of going anywhere ever again. Even when work calls? Even when the grief hits you out of nowhere? Even when loving me feels scary again? Especially then." He pulled her closer, until they were sharing breath and heartbeats. "I meant what I said last night, Anaël. No more walls, no more running. I choose you every day and every moment, for the rest of my life." The words settled into her heart like seeds in fertile ground, but she needed more than pretty promises in the aftermath of passion. "Prove it," she challenged gently. "How?" "Stay home today. Call in sick. Reschedule your meetings. Delegate whatever crisis is undoubtedly waiting in your inbox. Spend the day with me, doing absolutely nothing productive." Michael's eyebrows rose. "So you want me to play hooky? I want you to choose me over Miller Investments for one day. I want you to remember what it feels like to exist outside of conference rooms and profit margins." For a moment, she thought he might refuse. The old Michael would have listed a dozen reasons why he couldn't possibly take a day off: board meetings, client calls, the endless demands of running an empire. But this Michael, the one who'd made love to her until the stars faded, reached for his phone on the nightstand and typed a quick message. "Done." he said, tossing the phone aside. Harrison can handle whatever comes up. Today is ours. The casual way he said it, as if choosing her over work was the most natural thing in the world, made her throat tight with emotion. What do you want to do with our stolen day? She asked. Everything. Nothing. I want to make you breakfast and actually manage not to burn it. I want to take a shower with you and remember what it feels like to start my day with your hands in my hair. I want to sit on our terrace and drink coffee while you tell me all the things I missed while I was being an idiot. That's quite a list. I have 6 months of being a husband to make up for. His expression grew serious. And I know one day won't erase all the hurt I caused, but it's a start. She leaned forward and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of forgiveness. It's a very good start. They made breakfast together, Michael handling the coffee, while Anaël rescued eggs from certain doom, both of them moving around each other in the kitchen, with an ease that felt both familiar and new. He kept finding reasons to touch her, a hand on her back as he passed behind her, fingers tangling with hers as she handed him a plate, lips brushing her temple when she leaned into him. You're being very affectionate this morning, she observed, not complaining. 6 months of not touching you, he said simply. I'm making up for lost time. They ate on the terrace overlooking Central Park, the October air crisp but warmed by Indian summer sunshine. Michael had pulled on jeans and a grey sweater that made his eyes look like storm clouds, while she'd chosen a flowing white dress that caught the breeze and made her feel like herself again. Tell me about your book, he said, refilling her coffee cup. The one you were working on before everything. Anaël's hand stilled on her fork. She'd forgotten he even knew about the novel she'd been writing, a love story about second chances and finding yourself after loss. She'd abandoned it when their marriage started falling apart, unable to write about happy endings when her own seemed so uncertain. I stopped working on it, she admitted. Why? Because it was about a couple who finds their way back to each other after tragedy, and I didn't believe in that anymore. Michael reached across the small table and took her hand. Do you believe in it now? She looked at him, really looked. His dark hair was tousled from her fingers, his lips slightly swollen from her kisses, his eyes soft with love and determination in equal measure. This was the man who'd held her through the night, who'd whispered promises against her skin, who'd chosen her over his empire without hesitation. I'm starting to, she said softly. Then finish it. Write our ending. We don't know how our story ends yet. We know how this chapter ends. He brought her hand to his lips. With us, together, choosing love over fear. The afternoon passed in a haze of rediscovered intimacy. They showered together, Michael's hands worshipping her body with soap and reverence. They napped tangled in sheets that smelled like them again. They talked, really talked, about everything and nothing, filling in 6 months of silence with words and laughter and the occasional tear. As evening approached, they found themselves back in the living room where everything had started the night before, curled together on the sofa with wine and the comfortable silence of people who'd found their way home. I have something for you, Michael said suddenly, reaching for a small velvet box on the side table. Anaël's breath caught. Michael, it's not what you think, he said quickly, though his smile was mysterious. Open it. Inside the box was a simple gold band, elegant and understated, with an inscription on the inside. Choose us. Always. It's a promise ring, he explained, his voice soft with emotion. A promise that I'll choose you every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. We're already married, she pointed out, though tears were streaming down her cheeks. We got married the first time with hope and dreams, and no idea what we were promising each other. This time, I want to marry you with full knowledge of what love costs. I want to promise you my scars along with my heart, my grief along with my joy. I want to choose you not despite our imperfections, but because of them. He slid the ring onto her right hand, next to her original wedding band. Will you choose me too? Every day, even when I stumble, even when the man you married disappoints you again? Especially then, she whispered, echoing his words from the morning. They sat together as the sun set over Manhattan, two people who'd lost each other and found their way back. It wasn't a fairy tale. There would still be hard days, difficult conversations, moments when grief threatened to pull them apart again, but they would face it together. And sometimes, Anaël thought as Michael's arms tightened around her, the most beautiful love stories weren't about perfect people finding perfect love. They were about broken people choosing to heal together, one day at a time, one choice at a time, until choosing each other became as natural as breathing, until love became not just a feeling, but a decision they made every morning when they opened their eyes and saw each other's faces. Until forever felt not like a promise they might break, but like a gift they gave each other every single day. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after their perfect stolen day. Anaël woke to Michael's phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand, his arm tightening around her waist as consciousness pulled him from sleep. They'd been sharing their bed again, sharing everything again, and the past weeks had felt like a second honeymoon. Coffee and conversations, stolen kisses in elevators, making love like they were trying to erase 6 months of emptiness with tenderness and passion. "Don't answer it," she murmured against his chest, breathing in the scent of his skin mixed with their shared warmth. But the phone kept ringing, and Michael was already reaching for it, his body going tense as he saw the caller ID. "It's Harrison," he said, his voice tight with worry. He wouldn't call this late unless— "Mr. Miller." Harrison's voice was strained even through the speaker. "I'm sorry to wake you, but we have a situation. The Singapore deal is falling apart. Chen is threatening to pull out entirely, and if he does, the entire Pacific expansion collapses," Michael finished, already sitting up. "What happened?" "Someone leaked the confidential terms to his competitors. He thinks it came from us. He's giving us 12 hours to fix this, or he walks with his $3 billion. Anaël felt Michael's entire body go rigid. The Singapore deal was his masterpiece. 2 years of careful negotiation, the foundation of Miller Investments' expansion into Asian markets. Without it, the company would survive, but Michael's vision of a global empire would crumble. "I need to get to Singapore," Michael said, his voice already shifting into the focused tone she recognized from his business calls. "Book me on the next flight, call Reyes, and tell him to meet me at the airport with all the Chen files. And get Goldman on the phone. We'll need legal to review every document with fresh eyes." "Already done. Your flight leaves at 6 a.m. Michael hung up and turned to find Anaël watching him with careful eyes. She could see the war playing out across his features, the man who'd promised to choose her every day, battling against the CEO who'd built his identity around never backing down from a challenge. "How long?" she asked quietly. "I don't know. Could be days, could be weeks. Chen is old school. He'll want face-to-face meetings, relationship building, proof that we're trustworthy partners." Michael ran his hands through his hair. "Anaël, I'm sorry. The timing is terrible," she finished. "It's terrible timing, Michael." He flinched as if she'd struck him. "What do you want me to do, let 2 years of work collapse? Watch $3 billion walk away because the timing is inconvenient for our marriage?" The words hit her like cold water. For a moment she was transported back to 6 months ago, back to being the wife who came second to merger meetings and conference calls. "I want you to remember what you promised me," she said softly. "I want you to remember that you choose us. Always. This isn't about choosing business over you. This is about saving something I've worked for." "And what about what we've worked for?" The question came out sharper than she'd intended. 3 weeks ago you gave me a ring and promised you'd choose me every day. Now the first real test comes along, and you're already planning to disappear for weeks." Michael's face went carefully blank, the expression she'd learned to hate, the one that meant he was retreating behind his CEO mask. "That's not fair, Anaël. This is a crisis. So was our marriage. For 6 months our marriage was in crisis, and you dealt with it by running away. Now your business is in crisis, and you're ready to run toward it. Do you see the pattern?" He stood abruptly, pacing to the window overlooking the city. "It's not the same thing, isn't it?" She followed him, her silk nightgown flowing around her as she moved. "You're still using work as an excuse to avoid dealing with difficult emotions. You're still choosing the safety of boardrooms over the messiness of real intimacy. I have to go to Singapore, Anaël. I don't have a choice." "You always have a choice." She moved to stand in front of him, forcing him to meet her eyes. "The question is, what are you choosing?" For a long moment, they stared at each other in the blue-white glow of the city lights. She could see him wavering, could see the love and duty and fear all warring in his expression. "If I don't go, if I let this deal collapse, I'll resent you for it," he said finally, his voice raw with honesty. "And if that resentment grows, it'll poison everything we've rebuilt. And if you go, if you disappear for weeks right when we're learning how to be married again, what does that do to us?" He had no answer for that. Anaël closed her eyes, feeling the weight of their entire relationship balanced on this moment. She could demand that he stay, could use tears and ultimatums and the promise ring on her finger to guilt him into choosing her over Singapore. But that wouldn't be choosing, That would be manipulation. When she opened her eyes, her decision was clear. Go, she said quietly. Michael's eyebrows shot up. What? Go to Singapore, save your deal, prove to Chen that Miller Investments is worth his trust. Anna. But, she continued, holding up a hand to stop his response, you don't go as the old Michael. You don't disappear into work and forget you have a wife waiting at home. You call me every day. You share what's happening, how you're feeling, whether the negotiations are going well or falling apart. You let me be part of your life, even when we're on opposite sides of the world. Hope flickered in his blue eyes. You'd be okay with that? I'd be okay with that. She reached up and cupped his face in her hands. Because that's what marriage looks like, Michael. It's not about never being apart. It's about staying connected, even when distance tries to pull you away from each other. And if I fail, if I can't save the deal and come home having lost everything I worked for, then you come home to me, and we figure out what comes next. Together. She smiled, soft and sure. Your worth isn't measured in billion-dollar deals, husband. It's measured in the man you are when the deals fall apart. He pulled her into his arms then, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. I love you, he whispered against her hair. God, I love you so much. How did I get so lucky? You chose well, she said, making him laugh despite the gravity of the moment. I'll call you from the plane, and when I land, and every day after that, I know you will. And when I come home, when you come home, we'll celebrate if you won, and we'll comfort each other if you lost. Either way, we'll be okay. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes shining with something that looked like awe. How are you so sure? Because we survived 6 months of you running away from me. A few weeks of you running towards something while keeping me close? That's nothing. Michael's smile was brilliant, transformative. Have I mentioned that I'm completely crazy about you? Show me when you get back. Count on it. As he packed for Singapore, moving with the efficient precision of a man who'd traveled the world building his empire, Anaël felt a peace she hadn't expected. This wasn't abandonment. This was partnership. This wasn't him choosing business over her. This was both of them choosing trust over fear. The old Anaël would have seen his leaving as proof that work would always come first. The old Michael would have left without explanation, burying himself in negotiations to avoid the messy emotions of goodbye. But they weren't those people anymore. They were two people who'd learned that love wasn't about never being tested. It was about how you handled the tests when they came. And as Michael kissed her goodbye at the airport, promising to call from the plane, Anaël knew that whatever happened in Singapore, they would face it together. Even from opposite sides of the world, they would choose each other. Every day, every moment, every heartbeat that kept them connected across oceans and time zones and all the challenges that lay ahead. Because that's what forever looked like. Not perfect harmony, but the conscious choice to love each other through the discord. And they were just getting started. 11 days. That's how long Michael had been gone when his key turned in the penthouse door at 11:43 p.m. on a Friday night. Anaël was curled on the living room sofa in her cream silk pajamas, laptop open, working on the final chapter of her novel, the love story she'd abandoned months ago and only recently found the courage to finish. She'd been expecting his call from the airport, not his actual presence in their foyer. Michael? She set the laptop aside and stood, her heart hammering with surprise and something deeper, anticipation mixed with the fear that always came when the person you loved most walked back into your orbit after crossing oceans. He appeared in the doorway like a mirage she was afraid to trust. 11 days of high-stakes negotiations had left their mark. His usually pristine appearance was rumpled, his tie long since discarded, his white dress shirt wrinkled and open at the collar. Dark circles shadowed his blue eyes, and his jaw was rough with stubble that spoke of 18-hour days and too little sleep. But he was smiling, tired, overwhelmed, but undeniably smiling. "Hi, beautiful," he said, his deep voice rough with exhaustion and something that sounded like relief. "You're supposed to be in Singapore for another 3 days," she said, not moving toward him yet. These 11 days had been a masterclass in long-distance marriage, daily calls that stretched for hours, video chats where they'd eaten meals together across time zones, text messages that bridged the gap between his morning meetings and her evening bath. But having him here, solid and real, and taking up space in their living room, felt almost surreal. "I closed the deal." His smile widened. "Liu signed the contracts this morning Singapore time. $3 billion, 5-year partnership, exclusive rights to the entire Pacific Rim expansion. Relief and pride crashed over her in equal waves. "Michael, that's incredible. You did it. We did it." He moved closer, close enough that she could smell the airplane's staleness mixed with his cologne, close enough to see the way his eyes tracked her face like he was memorizing her all over again. "I couldn't have done any of it without you. These past 11 days, knowing you were here, knowing you believed in me even when I wasn't sure I believed in myself, that made all the difference." She reached up and touched his face, her thumb tracing the sharp line of his cheekbone. "You look exhausted." "I am exhausted, but I couldn't wait until Monday to see you. I've been awake for 36 hours straight, and the only thing that kept me conscious on the flight home was knowing you'd be here. Tell me about it. All of it. What happened with Lou? How did you turn it around?" Michael's expression grew serious. "Can I tell you in bed? I just want to hold you while I talk. 11 days feels like 11 years when you're used to falling asleep with someone in your arms." She nodded, taking his hand and leading him toward the stairs. "Come on, let's get you home properly." In their bedroom, she helped him out of his wrinkled suit jacket and dress shirt while he talked, his words painting a picture of boardrooms and cultural negotiations, of 18-hour days spent rebuilding trust one conversation at a time. "The breakthrough came on day 8, he said as she handed him comfortable sleep pants and a soft t-shirt. "Lou invited me to dinner at his family's private residence. Not a business dinner, a real dinner, with his wife and daughters. And while we were eating, he asked me about you." "About me?" Anaela paused in turning down the bed. "He wanted to know why I'd married so young, whether American marriages were as unstable as the statistics suggested, how we balanced career ambitions with family life." Michael pulled the t-shirt over his head, his hair sticking up endearingly. "And I found myself telling him about us, about how I'd almost lost you, about what it taught me, about what really matters." She sat on the edge of the bed, watching him with soft eyes. "What did you tell him?" "That the most successful deal I ever closed was convincing you to marry me. That every business victory feels hollow if I don't have someone to share it with. That building an empire means nothing if you don't have a home to return to at the end of the day." Michael sat beside her, taking her hands in his travel-roughened ones. "He said something that stuck with me. A man who knows how to love his wife will know how to honor his business partners." He signed the contracts the next morning. "So our marriage saved your deal?" "Our marriage saved me," he corrected softly. "The deal was just a side effect." "Oh, I almost forgot," he said suddenly, reaching for his travel bag beside the bed. "I brought you something." "Michael, you didn't have to." "I wanted to." He pulled out a small, elegantly wrapped box. "I saw this in a little shop in Chinatown and thought of you immediately." Inside was a delicate silver necklace with a pendant shaped like 2 interlocking circles. Simple, understated, but clearly crafted with exquisite attention to detail. On the back of the pendant was an inscription in both English and Chinese. "Distance means nothing when someone means everything." Anaela's breath caught, her eyes filling with tears. "Michael, it's beautiful. The shopkeeper told me it's a traditional symbol for eternal love that transcends all barriers. I thought, after these 11 days..." He trailed off, suddenly uncertain. She leaned forward and kissed him then, soft and sweet, and full of 11 days' worth of missing him. When they broke apart, both breathing slightly unsteadily, she rested her forehead against his. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "Not just for the deal, but for how you handled being away. You kept your promise. You stayed connected. And this," she touched the necklace gently, "this is perfect." It wasn't easy. There were moments when I wanted to disappear into the work, when the old patterns tried to kick in. But every time I felt myself pulling away, I'd think about that promise ring and what it meant. I'd think about you and choose us instead. They settled into bed together, Michael pulling her against his chest, with a sigh that seemed to release 11 days of tension. She could feel him relaxing by degrees, his body remembering the safety of their shared space. "I miss this," he murmured into her hair. "Video calls are amazing, but they can't replace this. The weight of you against me, the way you smell like home, the sound of your breathing when you think I'm asleep. I missed it too. The bed felt enormous without you." "Never again," he said fiercely. "I mean, I'll probably have to travel for business, but never again will I let distance become disconnection, and never again will I stay away a single day longer than absolutely necessary." She tilted her head to look at him in the dim light filtering through their bedroom windows. "What about the next crisis? The next deal that threatens to consume your life? I'll handle it differently. We'll handle it differently." His hand found hers, his thumb tracing over the promise ring he'd given her. I learned something in Singapore, Anael. Success means nothing if you achieve it at the cost of everything that makes life worth living. And what makes life worth living? This. You. Us. Waking up next to the woman I love and knowing that whatever challenges the day brings, we'll face them together. He paused, his expression growing vulnerable. I know I've said this before, but I need you to know. I choose you. Not just when it's easy. Not just when there are no other demands on my time, but always. Especially when choosing you means disappointing clients or missing opportunities, or admitting that my wife is more important than my empire. Tears pricked her eyes. I choose you too. I choose the man who calls me every day from the other side of the world just to hear my voice. I choose the man who tells Chinese billionaires about his marriage because he's proud of what we've built together. Even when I'm stubborn and workaholic and occasionally disappear for 11 days to save the family business? Especially then. She smiled, echoing the words that had become their refrain. Because that's not disappearing, Michael. That's being a partner. That's sharing your life with me even when geography tries to keep us apart. They lay together in the darkness, two people who'd learned that love wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing each other despite imperfections, because of them, and through them. Anael? Michael's voice was soft with approaching sleep. Thank you. For what? For not giving up on us. For fighting for our marriage even when I was too broken to fight for it myself. For being the kind of woman worth building a life with. She pressed a kiss to his chest, right over his heart. Thank you for coming back. Not just from Singapore, but from wherever you went when grief tried to steal you from me. I'll always come back to you, he promised. No matter how far I travel or how lost I get, I'll always find my way home. Promise? I promise. You're my home, Anael Miller. You're my anchor and my compass and my reason for everything. As sleep claimed them both, wrapped in each other's arms in the bed they'd almost lost the right to share, Anael felt a peace deeper than contentment. They'd been tested by grief and distance, by old patterns and new challenges, and they'd emerged stronger, not unscathed. There were scars on both their hearts that might never fully fade, but scars, she'd learned, were just proof that you'd survived something that tried to break you. And love, real love, wasn't about avoiding the breaking. It was about choosing to heal together, one day at a time, one choice at a time, until choosing each other became as natural as breathing, until home wasn't a place, but a person. Until forever stopped being a promise you made and became a gift you gave each other every morning when you opened your eyes and chose love all over again. 6 months later, the manuscript sat on the marble kitchen island like a promise finally kept. Hanasil stood at the window, watching the first snow of December dust Central Park in pristine white, her fingers unconsciously touching the silver necklace that had become her most treasured piece of jewelry. 6 months since Michael's return from Singapore, and the pendant's inscription, "Distance means nothing when someone means everything," had proven prophetic in ways she'd never imagined. Is that it? Michael's voice was soft with awe as he approached from behind, his arms circling her waist with the easy intimacy of a man who'd learned that coming home meant more than just walking through a door. That's it. She leaned back against his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with the coffee he'd made them both. 412 pages, 3 years in the making. And it's finally finished. Second Chances. He read the title page over her shoulder. By Anna L. Brooks Miller. His lips brushed her temple. I'm so proud of you, beautiful. The book, their book really, because so much of their story had woven itself into the fictional couple who'd learned to love each other through loss, would be published in the spring. Her editor called it a masterpiece of emotional honesty and the kind of love story that reminds us why we believe in forever. But for Anna L., it was simply the truth. Love wasn't about avoiding the storms. It was about learning to dance in the rain. Harrison called, Michael said, his arms tightening around her. The Liu partnership is exceeding all projections. The Singapore office officially opens next month. Are you going to the opening ceremony? We are, he corrected gently. If you want to come. Liu specifically requested that I bring my wife. Apparently, he's convinced that our marriage is the reason for our successful partnership. She turned in his arms, smiling up at the man who'd learned to measure success not just in billions, but in the brightness of his wife's smile. He might be right. He's definitely right. Michael's hands framed her face with the reverence of a man who'd almost lost everything that mattered. You know what today is? December 15th? 1 year ago today, Danny died. The words settled between them without the sharp edge of grief that had once made such anniversaries unbearable. There was sadness, yes, There would always be sadness for the friend they'd lost, the future they'd never share with him. But there was also gratitude for what his death had ultimately taught them about the preciousness of love. "Do you want to visit his grave?" she asked softly. "Later. Right now I want to do what Danny would have wanted us to do." "Which is?" Michael's smile was soft with memory and hard-won wisdom. "Live. Love each other shamelessly. Stop wasting time on anything that doesn't matter." He was right. In the months since Singapore, they'd restructured their entire lives around what truly mattered. Michael had promoted Harrison to Chief Operating Officer, delegating more responsibility so he could be present for the small moments that made marriage a joy instead of a duty. Dinner conversations that stretched for hours. Lazy Sunday mornings in bed with newspapers and terrible coffee. Spontaneous weekend trips to places they'd always meant to visit, but never found time for. "I have something for you," he said suddenly, producing a small wrapped box from his pocket. "Michael, it's not my birthday. It's better than your birthday." His eyes were dancing with mischief and love in equal measure. "It's the anniversary of the day I finally came home." Inside the box was a key, antique brass, ornate and beautiful, attached to a simple keychain engraved with coordinates. "What does it open?" she asked, though her heart was already racing with possibility. "Our future." He took the key and placed it in her palm, closing her fingers around the warm metal. "Those coordinates? They're for a little house in the Hamptons. 3 bedrooms, wrap-around porch, garden that's perfect for writing retreats and weekend escapes. I bought it last month." Anael's eyes filled with tears. "You bought us a house? I bought us a home. A place where we can remember what we're building together when the city gets too loud and the business gets too demanding." He brushed away her tears with gentle thumbs. "A place where we can write the next chapter of our story." "And what does that chapter look like?" Michael's smile was radiant with possibility. "Whatever we want it to. Maybe it includes children who will grow up knowing that their parents chose love over fear. Maybe it includes anniversary trips to Singapore, where we'll tell Liu how his dinner invitation changed our lives. Maybe it includes growing old together in rocking chairs on that wrap-around porch, still choosing each other every single day. Maybe it includes all of that," she whispered, rising on her toes to kiss him. The kiss tasted like promises and possibilities, like second chances and forever love. When they broke apart, both smiling through tears of joy, Anael looked around their penthouse, the marble and crystal palace where they'd almost lost each other, where they'd learned to find each other again. "No regrets?" Michael asked, reading her thoughts with the intuition of a man who'd learned to pay attention to what mattered. "Only one," she said, making his eyebrows rise in concern. "I regret that Danny never got to see us figure it out. He would have loved being right about us." "He did see us figure it out," Michael said softly. "He saw it before we did. That's what best friends do. They believe in your happy ending, even when you've forgotten how the story goes." As the snow continued to fall outside their windows, painting the world in fresh possibility, Anael thought about the year that had nearly broken them and ultimately made them stronger, about the grief that had driven them apart and the love that had brought them home, about the man who died too young and the couple who'd learned to live fully in his honor. "I love you, Michael Miller," she said, her voice steady with certainty. "Today, tomorrow, and all the days we get to share together. I love you too, Anael Brooks Miller." He spun her around the kitchen, both of them laughing like teenagers drunk on possibility. "For all the chapters we've already written and all the ones still waiting to be lived." Outside, the city sparkled with winter magic, but inside their home, their real home, the one built not of marble and steel, but of forgiveness and choice, and the daily decision to love each other, warmth reigned supreme. And in that warmth, two people who'd learned that forever wasn't a promise you made once, but a gift you gave each other every single day, began planning the beautiful, ordinary, extraordinary life they would build together. One choice at a time, one day at a time, one love at a time, until choosing each other became as natural and essential as breathing itself. Love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about choosing someone imperfect and deciding to build something beautiful together. Anaela and Michael's story reminds us that the strongest relationships aren't those that never face storms, but those that learn to dance in the rain. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't holding on tighter, but having the courage to let go and trust that real love will always find its way back home. Would you have made the same choice Anael made when Michael had to leave for Singapore? What did this story teach you about the difference between love as a feeling and love as a decision? Your participation means a lot to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel leave a like and comment your thoughts. Your participation is very important to us. See you next time.